Ladies and gentlemen, first, please silence all of your electronic devices. Thank you. And may I ask you please to stand for the presentation of the colors by the Howard University ROTC Color Guard. And please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by Howard University Cadet Colby Brown.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right shoulder, forward.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. A good evening and welcome to this amazing group of people. You are in the company of history tonight. You are in the company of greatness. We welcome you to the event honoring the Tuskegee Airmen and the East Coast chapter, specifically, of the Tuskegee Airmen. Our chapter, and may I say, it's a pleasure to say our, because I am a member. Our chapter is the largest in the United States, and this year it is 50 years old. Happy anniversary to the East Coast chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen. I'm Maureen Bunyan, and I'm your host for the evening. We are so happy to be sharing this evening with you, and we're also so happy because just a few weeks ago, there were some really important commemorative observances for Tuskegee Airmen. We hosted a wreath-laying ceremony last week at the U.S. Air Force Memorial, and each year, as many of you know, we also recognize Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day on the fourth Thursday in March. So March is a very important day for us. This year also marks, as I mentioned, the 50th anniversary of this chapter. We thank you for joining us tonight to honor the airmen, to learn about their history, and to celebrate their legacy. Our theme for the evening is Tuskegee Airmen, Soaring to Greater Heights. We also thank the marvelous Tuskegee Airmen Quartet for entertaining us during this evening's reception. And we acknowledge the support and service of many, many people who are here today and some who are not. We want to honor and thank the East Coast Tuskegee Airmen Chapter honorary chairs. I believe they are with us, and if they are, please stand. Honorary chairs Lorraine Bradley of Delaware and Dr. Christine Warnicki. Many thanks. Many thanks also to ECTA partners, Wayne Terrell. Mr. Terrell, are you here? Mr. Terrell is with the Coca-Cola Corporation, and also Mr. Robert Rashford, President and CEO of Genesis Engineering, both great supporters of our chapter. Now, as you may have noticed, our host for the evening is the Boeing Company. And I'm happy to join you in welcoming Mr. Ziad Ojakli, who is Boeing's Executive Vice President for Government Operations. He joins us now to share some greetings.
Thanks, Maureen. And, you know, we were talking before. It was an honor meeting you and talking to you outside. Kind of feel like I spent a lot of time watching you on the news for years and years here. Not only do I feel like I'm a great fan, but I'm an even greater fan of what you've done through the decades in the Washington, D.C. community. You are an incredible inspiration to us, too. So good evening, everyone, and on behalf of everybody here at Boeing, thanks for joining us at our headquarters, our newly crowned headquarters in this area, as we honor and celebrate the legacy and the impact of the Tuskegee Airmen. For decades, you have dedicated yourselves to preserving the history of the original Tuskegee Airmen, while also seeking to motivate and inspire the next generation of airmen and women. Your steadfast leadership and support has provided young people of color the chance they deserve to have and lead in the fields of aviation, aerospace, and STEM more broadly. Because of you, young innovators and future leaders can look back on history to be proud of and look up to present-day leaders that look like them. The value of that cannot be overstated. We're proud to welcome you here today, and we are also proud to join you in this shared mission and this shared vision. We know diversity makes us and the entire aerospace industry better, and we are committed to doing our part to diversifying and strengthening the talent pipeline, whether through longstanding partnerships with historically black colleges and universities, or supporting programs for young students to get their first exposure to the wonders of aerospace. We want to create as many pathways and resources for success as possible. While the work for equity is never done, we are encouraged to see more and more women and men achieving new heights and creating a legacy of their own in leadership positions across the aviation industry. Now, there's a famous quote by Sir Isaac Newton that goes, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants," meaning progress and innovation are never achieved alone and are made possible by the trailblazers who came before us. Today we honor the giants. We honor the giants that were the Tuskegee Airmen. Men who always understood they were pulling double duty. One to their country and another to their community to pave the way towards a greater future for others. At Boeing, one way we honor that legacy is through our T-7A Red Hawk program, whose name is a tribute to the Tuskegee Airmen, and the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, flown by the U.S. Army Air Force's 1st Black Fighter Squadron. And soon, very soon, a full-scale model of the T-7A Red Hawk will be displayed at Davis Airfield at the U.S. Air Force Academy, beside its P-51 Red Tail counterpart. But program naming and model airplanes are just a small piece of what it means to thank heroes and honor legends. But our hope is that acts like these can inspire young cadets and visitors alike to learn more about the airmen and take away the lessons that help them embody their character, bravery, and sacrifice. Congratulations again on 50 years of elevating and celebrating the Tuskegee Airmen. We know you have an exciting program ahead, and we are humbled to share a room with some of the living legends here with us tonight, including Cadet William Fauntroy, Jr., Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Ivan Ware, and we're sorry that Lieutenant Colonel Harvey was unable to join us at the last minute, but we honor him too. As a reflection of our gratitude and respect for these heroes and the more than 10,000 black men and women who served as Tuskegee Airmen, and the support personnel that included navigators and bombardiers, mechanics and instructors, crew chiefs, nurses, and cooks, Boeing will commit $10,000 to the East Coast Chapter's Youth in Aviation program. And we do that so that the next generation of leaders across the Washington, D.C. region can get the exposure to and confidence to pursue careers in aviation. The Tuskegee Airmen brought honor to this country, and it's our mission together to bring honor to their legacy. Their story is the story of our American spirit, and it plays out like all the other great stories in our history, with great lessons and a full measure of hope in our future. Thank you again for inviting Boeing to be part of this very special occasion. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ojakli. We really appreciate your presence, and especially since you come bearing great gifts. Thank you. I am very happy to be able to tell you that, as you know, Boeing is continuing its support and long-term support to organizations like this, especially those who are committed to sharing American history, is very important. We have got a real treat for you right now. You may remember in 2012, a marvelous action-adventure movie captured a worldwide audience. That movie was called Red Tails, and of course it starred the great Cuba Gooding. You also may know that Lucas Productions produced Red Tails and simultaneously created a documentary companion to Red Tails called Double Victory, the Tuskegee Airmen at War. The documentary tells the story through the voices of the airmen. We would like to share a 15-minute excerpt from the film as we prepare for a special discussion this evening with some of our local airmen. Thank you. Thank you.
It was September 1st, 1939. A brutal surprise attack by Hitler's Germany on neighboring Poland. Central to Germany's plan for overwhelming victory was its air force, the Luftwaffe. Days later, Britain and France declared war against Germany. World War II had begun. But with bombs falling in Europe, Americans geared up to fight, Black America included.
I believe it was my duty and responsibility, my father did and my grandfather did, that the country's in trouble, you work for it, you do what you have to do.
You can't turn your back on your own country. So we're as patriotic as anybody else. And so we wanted our chance to prove that we could do something.
But for African Americans, answering the call of duty meant defending a country that saw them as second-class citizens. The Pittsburgh Courier, the leading black newspaper of the day, called for a national campaign to fight for a double victory.
African Americans were actually fighting a war on two fronts. The standard war that everyone else understood, which was for victory over fascism. But the double V, the other prong, meant victory over racism and discrimination at home in the United States.
Your nation calls on you to go out and fight and die for your country, and you can't even sit down in a restaurant and eat a hot dog. It's not a pleasant feeling when you look at it in the long range and you think, what am I giving my life for? What am I volunteering to die for?
If you became a pilot in the United States Air Force, you automatically became a commissioned officer, which meant that you could give any white non-commissioned officer orders.
For the Air Corps, it was unthinkable for blacks to command whites, let alone fly airplanes. As justification, Air Corps leaders pointed to a 1925 report written by the Army itself.
The document said that Negroes were lazy, they didn't have enough sense, they had no coordination.
And they lacked the intelligence to handle sophisticated type of chores like driving tanks or flying airplanes, and even if they did, they lacked the bravery to successfully engage in combat.
This 1925 War College report really reflects the racist atmosphere in the United States in the interwar period.
The 1925 study became really influential, and it's very unfortunate that it did because it remained influential into the late 1930s, early 1940s.
Under orders from the White House, the Army reluctantly activated the nation's first black aviation unit, the 99th Pursuit Squadron. The unit would be made up of just 33 pilots and several hundred ground crew, a tiny fraction of the 30,000 pilots the Army planned to train.
The generals refer to it without any irony whatsoever all the way through as the experiment.
Thousands of young, ambitious black men applied for the coveted spots.
In order to get into the cadet training program, black or white, one had to have at least 2 years of college, at a time when I think fewer than 1% of African Americans had a college degree. So this really is the cream of the crop.
I really didn't care whether it was segregated unit or non-segregated. I wanted to fly. And I would do anything to get the opportunity to fly.
Flying itself was so much fun. In the air, there's no black or white or green or whatever. You're a pilot. And that helped to mute some of the racism on the ground because we wanted to fly. That was it. We wanted to fly.
You keep finding that the great majority of officers really would like to scuttle this whole operation. But there are enlightened white officers at every point that are instrumental in helping it to succeed.
One such individual took command at Tuskegee in early 1943, a young colonel from the South, Noel Parrish.
He did tell us that he would be fair with us, and that word was very important. And I have to admit that the man kept his word to the T.
America had been at war for more than a year. The U.S. and its allies, Britain and the Soviet Union, were attacking German-held positions from all sides. On April 1st, 1943, after a 6-month wait, the men of the 99th got the word and started packing, and bound for North Africa. The airmen's assignment: drive the Germans out of Pantelleria, a strategic stepping stone to the Italian peninsula. Sorties against the heavily fortified island began with ground strafing missions.
That's the worst mission a fighter jock could have, was strafing. You go in at a stationary target, but there's stationary gunners out there. They're not moving. And they can just sit there and track you across the horizon.
In just 2 weeks, air power alone brought Pantelleria to its knees. By the fall of 1944, the Red Tails escorted bombers day in and day out. Along with the new high-profile assignment came a spectacular new airplane. The most advanced tactical fighter in the war, the P-51 Mustang.
Well, I think it felt like going from a Model 8 Ford to a jet. It was a real transition, a real fine one.
My check out in the P-51, that was half scary and half joyous. Once I got the bird in the air, hey, I was in hog heaven, you know, because it was a nice fine bird.
Flight speeds of 440 miles an hour, excellent high altitude performance. You've got the plane to match up now and go the distance.
As the bombers pushed deeper into enemy territory, the escort missions became increasingly dangerous.
All of those targets were heavily guarded. They had all kinds of flak burns down there. And we could see all this flak coming up, you know.
They'd fired from the ground, and when the shell explodes, it throws all these pieces out. That's what tore airplanes apart. We couldn't do anything about the flak, but good chance I wouldn't be here today if it hadn't been for that fighter protection.
The missions went on and on and on.
All of these guys were playing Russian roulette. The life expectancy of a fighter pilot was probably 15 or 20 missions.
Keep in mind that we're talking about guys who were 19 like myself. The old dudes were 23, you know. They had just passed teenage and just gotten there. And to accept and live with these losses was something they had to grow into.
You've flown with a guy all day, and I saw 2 of them get killed. There's an empty bed over there, and you don't rest well that night.
March 24th, 1945. Pilots were called to the briefing room. Their mission? Escort B-17 bombers on the first leg of an attack on Berlin. Their direct orders? Protect the bombers at all costs. Halfway through the mission, something went wrong.
We were supposed to be relieved by a white fighter group, and they didn't show up because they had weather problems.
Knowing they'd be pushing their fuel supplies to the limit, the fighter pilots stuck with the bombers and headed to Berlin. As the warplanes approached the target, they suddenly came face to face with the enemy. One of Hitler's secret weapons, the world's first jet fighters.
When they tell you you have the best fighter plane in the sky, and all of a sudden you see a couple of fellows come flying rings around you, and there's nothing you can do about it, that's a pretty helpless feeling.
The planes were Messerschmitt 262s.
ME-262 has a speed that is actually 100 miles in excess of what a Mustang can achieve.
I knew what they were. They were coming in to attack the bombers. I said, drop your tanks, follow me.
The Red Tail pilots had just one advantage over the Nazi jets: maneuverability.
Instead of going this way, I went down, turned the plane upside down, went down under the bombers, and then made a hard right turn, and I caught one of the jets just as he was coming in to shoot down the B-17. I hit him broad stream, boom, he blew up. Bailed out.
The Red Tails downed two more of Hitler's ferocious jets. The Berlin mission earned the Red Tails a Distinguished Unit Citation for outstanding performance of duty. A year after the War Department had almost pulled the Black Airmen from combat, top brass from the Army Air Forces visited Ramitelli to personally decorate 4 of the group's pilots. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered, bringing the war in Europe to an end. All told, America's first black fighter pilots had flown more than 1,500 missions, shooting down a total of 112 enemy aircraft. Over the summer, their fellow airmen began returning home.
Coming into New York Harbor with the flags waving and everybody exhilarating, Statue of Liberty.
Down the gangplank we go. There's a soldier that has a sign, white troops this way, colored troops this way.
Back home, back to reality. Segregation, discrimination, and everything else that went along with it.
The double victory had yet to be won. 3 years after the war's end, President Truman issued Executive Order 9981, officially banning segregation in the United States military. Within a year, the Red Tails were inactivated.
I moved forward with the attitude that this is going to be progress. And over the years, it proved just that.
The U.S. Air Force, which had become a separate branch of the military in 1947, was one of the first national institutions to integrate.
In many respects, the civil rights movement grows really right out of World War II and the World War II experience.
It was a time in history that we should be very proud of. It's a time of history where we helped change the world. And I think we set the star very, very high for anybody who's following us.
We helped black people raise their heads and say, I can do it.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I can go anywhere I want to go. And I remember a friend of mine saying, America's not perfect, but I'll hold her hand until she gets well.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in just a moment of silence in honor of the Tuskegee Airmen who were lost in World War II and who have left us since. Thank you so much. Now, I just want to give you a little bit more information about the documentary. That was Cuba Gooding, of course, as the narrator. And we showed you a 15-minute segment of a 90-minute documentary. The documentary also includes segments of half an hour and also an hour. And all of these segments can be found on YouTube. So please, if you yourselves care to watch, if your family members, if your friends, if your children, grandchildren, friends of your grandchildren want to watch, please tell them Double Victory is on YouTube. And watch with them if you can, because it's an incredible story, beautifully told, and helps to create the legacy that we are all so proud of. Now, we have another special few moments for you. We are blessed today, blessed this evening, not only to work long and hard to preserve the legacy and promote the history of the men and women who served our country and fought for our civil rights. We are also delighted tonight to be in the company of two local documented Tuskegee Airmen. I would like you to welcome to the stage DOTA Cadet William Fauntroy of Washington, D.C., who was a cadet at the end of World War II. We also warmly welcome DOTA Lieutenant Colonel Shelton Ivan Ware of New Jersey. We are sad to report that DOTA Lieutenant Colonel James Harvey, who was hoping to join us, regrets he cannot join us tonight because of illness. And it's a great pleasure, looking forward to seeing, and we're very happy he is here, Richard Baugh, knowledgeable about the Tuskegee Airmen, and he, the son of Tuskegee Airman Howard Baugh, who was a pilot trainer at Tuskegee Institute. And Mr. Baugh is a heritage member of the Tidewater, Virginia chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen, named after his father. I am just so happy to be with you all. And I want to warn you that DOTA Fauntroy can be a problem sometimes. And he seems to enjoy being that problem, so I will do my best to keep him in line. Our discussion tonight is about the personal experiences, of course, and the places in history of these men. And one of the reasons we're so glad to have Professor Baugh with us is because he is a historian who has documented not only his father's experience as a Tuskegee Airman, but also the experiences of so many other Tuskegee Airmen. We're very happy to have you here. Now, who would like to start first, gentlemen?
I'm the baby in the bunch, so.
Well, perhaps since you're the baby, we should start with the gentleman who is not the baby. And I'm not talking about Mr. Baugh or myself, although in your company, I feel a part of history, and it's a very profound feeling, and I'm sure that many of you share that feeling with me tonight. Well, okay, let's start, since we're talking about age. I wonder, Mr. Fauntroy, how old were you when you enlisted?
I was 17 years old, and I begged my mother to allow me to try to enlist in the United States Army Air Corps. My mother, I think, said, this dummy can't do anything like this. He hasn't even graduated from high school. But she signed for me, and I went to 11th and New York Avenue and asked if I could be in the United States Army Air Corps. They gave me a written exam that somehow I passed. And they sent me out to Bowling Field. And I took a psychomotive, psychological, and physical exam. I passed, apparently. And on February the 1st, 1944, I was sworn in to the United States Army Air Corps Reserves at 17 years old. I was enlisted in the service in May of 1944. In May of 1944, I was enlisted in the Army and sent to to Virginia, where I Camp Lee in Virginia. I was then transferred to Keesler Field, Mississippi, to take basic training to be a soldier. From there, right after the invasion, I was transferred to Tuskegee Army Airfield to become a pre-aviation cadet. And that was the beginning of my training that made me feel like I was somebody. I met John Curry in 1944. I guess he looked at me. I was 5'4.5" tall, 118 pounds. He said, this little boy needs some help. And he mentored me. John happens to be still alive at 100 years old in August of last year, and he lives around the corner from me. Oh. And I am so grateful to John and all the other Tuskegee Airmen whose shoulders I stand on. They came down and said, little boy, you need help, and I'm going to help you. And he has. And indeed, his wife has invited me to have dinner with them in May. And I hope that I can make it. Because John and people like those folks you saw on this double victory preview all have a meaning with me. My instructor, Leonard Jackson, shot down 3 German planes. Then he came back and taught me how to fly. Lee Archer took Colonel Parrish from Tuskegee to Washington to try to make sure that they didn't stop the experiment. One name that didn't appear in it, J.O. Plinton was an instructor in basic flying. And he is the person who took me up in an airplane the first time I ever got off the ground. J.O. Plinton, on the day I was leaving Tuskegee to come home to be discharged, asked me if I would like to go with him to start an airline in South America. I'm 19 years old. I don't have that kind of knowledge. And I said, no, I'm going home to Little Mom. And as it occurred, he went to South America, started an airline. It was bought by Eastern Airlines. He became the first black vice president of a major airline, Eastern Airlines. These are the kind of men that I stand on the shoulder of. And I don't take credit for anything except that God blessed me to have the privilege of meeting gentlemen like Lee Archer, to meeting Roscoe Brown. I sat on a stage with Roscoe Brown at Ford Theater, and I told the interviewer, I said, I'm in more awe than you are. I'm sitting on a stage with a man that shot down a German jet. And so those are the kinds of things that have happened to this little boy out of Westminster Street in World War II. And like I say, I stand on the shoulders of those men, and I'm so pleased with what goes on with our chapter and our presidents, the president of our chapter and the president of our national organization. I am proud to be associated with them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Dr. Ware,
yes.
Would you tell us a little bit about how you came to be a Tuskegee Airman? Tell us about your origins, please.
Well, they turned me down for World War II, so I spent that with the Army Ordnance. 32 vehicles, 120 men. We were Army Ordnance. We kept them rolling. The World War was won by the Jeep, the weapons carrier, and the 2.5 ton. We were a mobile force. We were not Air Force. The Air Corps was alive at the time that we were there. But they were a corps. They weren't an army. They were a corps. But they were our edge. They were the striking edge. And we all worked to have that striking edge. We all work because the sooner that we make that strike, and a good strike, the quicker we can go home. We have to stop standing in line waiting for letters from home. We knew they were being written, but we didn't always get them when we was hoping to get them. But somebody was on our side. Somebody upstairs looked down on us and gave us a break, and we managed to make it through. The greatest day, I think, was the day that we learned that the war was over. And we learned it the hard way. Somebody that morning went out and was killed in our outfit, but he wasn't quite dead, and we had to get him to the nearest first aid station or aid station. And on our way there, or when we got there, while he was being looked at, they told us, hey, did you hear? The war's over. Nobody told us. We just got it accidentally. At that time, we didn't have the communication capabilities that we have today. If you have children, 10, 11, 12, they probably have more powerful communication tools today than our services had at the beginning of World War II. By the end of World War II, we had some of the best equipment that the world had known at that time. We were able to develop what we needed. The Germans had been working on stuff for many years, the Italians before them. But once the Germans, the Nazis, took over, you didn't hear anything more about Mussolini and his Italians. They were overshadowed completely by the Germans, who had state-of-the-art. But somewhere in a number of places in the United States, our people were working on new designs, new capabilities, and they used captured equipment to learn what secrets they had. And the Americans created, up and down the line, better weapons of war than the Nazis had. And we had people who felt like America is our home, regardless of what is good or not good about it. She's got to survive. Why? Because our families are here. We don't worry about ourselves, but we're fighting for our families, not ourselves. We made it through based on the fact that many people who had minor abilities and capabilities gave what they had. And there was a place for everybody. Whatever talent you had or whatever skills you had, or if you had no skills, about 50% of the work in the military service doesn't require skills. It just requires a hard muscles and not too much between your ears, because you get tired of it and you'll start cheating. We were fortunate in America that we had time to prepare and time to enhance what was being learned by the troops in the field. Whatever we found out that the enemy was doing that was better than us, we got examples of that, sent it back to America, and America came back to us with a better product. So our bazookas were better, our airplanes were better, and it was a war in the air that was greater than World War I. I grew up thinking that World War I air power was the greatest thing that ever happened, and it was at that time, but it was nothing to what was developed and used and what was required to win World War II. We won it going away. We had more stuff, we had advanced more with our equipment, with our capabilities, than the Nazis had with all of their preparation during the war. Well, I don't want to be hogging all the information. We have others, but if you had any questions that I might answer, I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ware. Now, Professor Baugh, may I call you Professor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. You have a unique... You have a unique perspective, because your father was a Tuskegee Airman, and you, of course, are a historian that's devoted to the Tuskegee Airmen experience and legacy. First, tell us something about your father.
Okay, my father...
Oh, excuse me. If you could just turn the microphone on, that'd be great.
Any 12-year-olds in the
Perfect.
audience who can help
Great.
me with this technology? Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My father and I do have to, all due respect, correction, I'm a member of the Howard Baugh chapter in Petersburg, Virginia, not the Tidewater chapter. My father was from Petersburg, Virginia, attended Virginia State College at the time, University now. I was born in 1920 and I was always enamored with aircraft. The whole time he was growing up, to the point where if a plane flew over, he would run outside as a kid and just watch it as long as he could. He learned how to fly at Tuskegee, which was in primary training the first time he'd ever been in or on an airplane was when he was sitting at the controls in the front of a Stearman PT-13.
13D.
You remember those?
Yes.
And how old was he at the time?
Oh, he was, that was 1942. He was 22 years old.
Mm.
Yeah. He was one of the few, he had a 4-year degree from Virginia State. And right afterward, wanted to fly, got the opportunity, signed up, enlisted, and got married, then went to pilot training. Once he graduated, and you go through steps of primary training, basic training, then advanced training. He was actually one of the first relief pilots. He didn't get deployed until July of 1943. He graduated from pilot training in November of 42. He was in theater for 15 months, flew 136 combat missions. When his white counterparts, when they got to 50, they got to go home. But they would not, even though they had replacement pilots, for some reason, and we know what the reason is, they wouldn't send the replacements. He was one of 355. Keep in mind there was almost 1,000 pilots trained, 750 on single engine or fighter aircraft, but only 355 were deployed to fight in World War II. They still had pilots, but they wouldn't send the replacements. My father was one of the 355. He was one of 95 that received a Distinguished Flying Cross. He received an Air Medal and 3 oak leaf clusters and was credited with 1.5 aerial victories during World War II. After World War II, and he went to World War II as a second lieutenant, came back as a captain. He went back to Tuskegee as an instructor and later became the director of flying training at Tuskegee Army Airfield.
Thank you. And was your father the reason for your interest in the history of Tuskegee, of the Tuskegee Airmen?
Yes, and that's kind of an amusing story because I think all of these gentlemen, when you look at the originals, my father was never boastful. I didn't find out that he was a Tuskegee Airman until I was in high school. My oldest brother went into pilot training through ROTC. My father was a professor of aerospace studies at Tennessee State University.
Then at Howard University.
Pardon me?
At Howard University.
Well, he was
after.
Yeah, before he went to, Tennessee State, he was an instructor at Howard University, yes. And then later was the professor of aerospace studies at Tennessee State. And under him, my brother got his wings as a pilot in the Air Force. But when my brother went to pilot training, he was in a class with a whole bunch of other pilots, most of which were white, and from the Air Force Academy. And the instructor on day one went around and said, "What got you interested in flying?" And everybody went around the room telling their story. So Howard told his story. My brother is Howard, not a junior, but he's a Howard. And he told his story that, well, my dad took me up flying one day in a T-33, and I fell in love with it. They said, wait a minute. Your father is a pilot? I said, yeah. In the Air Force? I said, yeah. Your father is a Tuskegee Airman. He said, well, he trained at Tuskegee. Dad never bragged about it. We didn't have a clue. My brother, who was 5 years older than I, he comes back from pilot training and said, Dad, why didn't you tell me you were a Tuskegee? He didn't know anything about it, but all of the Air Force Academy grads knew who the Tuskegee Airmen were, knew their story, and told him the story. And then he comes back and tells his little brothers, I'm the youngest, and there's a brother in between, and I always ask, Dad, why didn't you tell us? You never asked. That was his answer all the time. So that's how we got interested in the Tuskegee Airmen, which, of course, things took off in 1995 with the first Tuskegee Airmen made for HBO film, and then 2012, you had mentioned Red Tails.
Maureen, could I add to?
Of course.
That's one of the things that has happened since World War II, so many of the Tuskegee Airmen never talked to their children about it. In fact, my roommate, Francis Ashwood, his son, when he met me, he said, I didn't know anything about Tuskegee Airmen. And it was because none of us talked about it until I think it was 74 when somebody said, let's have an organization.
And could you tell us why you did not talk about it?
I don't have the slightest idea why I didn't. Because, very frankly, you would brag about something that happened to you like what happened to me as a boy. But who would you brag it to? You know, like my brothers and sisters, they had no idea I was. The only thing they knew was the picture that the Army sent them with me when I was in training. When I came out of the service, I just went to Howard and went. After I completed high school, I went to Howard. And
you had not completed high school when you
No, I had. I got my high school diploma in 1947. I got discharged from the Army in November the 8th, 1945. So I was one of the few gentlemen who was able to pass the test and everything and take. One of the things that General Davis taught all of us, we didn't know at the time, but he taught all of us that you're going to have to take instructions and you're going to follow what you're supposed to do. And that's what the Tuskegee Army training was just like West Point. The upperclassmen took the dummies and told them what to do. And indeed, that made it possible for all of these gentlemen who finished before me to be good Army men and pilots. And his father is one of those guys that I stand on his shoulders. And I'm so happy that I've met people like him, that we could talk about what our fathers did or what our Tuskegee Airmen are.
Dr. Ware, did you talk about your experience in the war with your family or with friends?
Well, in World War II, there were 4 black medium automotive maintenance companies. We didn't have airplanes. Mm-hmm. We had trucks. The war was won by 2 vehicles, the 2.5-ton general purpose truck and the Jeep. The Jeep was so popular that after the war, they had them as civilian vehicles, and a lot of people bought Jeeps. There were 4 black medium automotive maintenance companies during World War II, 3417, 3418, 19, and 20. I was the last man assigned to the last one. You're assigned by, alphabet, so the W's are the last ones. I was assigned to 3420th Medium Automotive Maintenance Company. We were medium, which meant that, and we were automotive, which meant that we were on wheels. Our company had 32 vehicles that were dedicated to carrying us and our equipment. We could go anywhere, set up in 2 hours. No, I beg your pardon. Set up in 3 hours. We could tear down in 2 hours and go to work. We could repair anything that had wheels on it, from the Jeep, which was the smallest thing at that time, to the 2.5-ton. They had some bigger vehicles, but they were diesel, and we were not equipped for diesel. You had to have special equipment for that. There were 4 black World War II organizations that were medium automotive maintenance, 2 in the Pacific, 2 in Europe. I was with the 2 that were in Europe. 3420, 3417 were the 2. They took the 2 on the end, sent them to Europe, and the 2 in the middle they sent to the South Pacific. We thought we did a pretty good job of keeping them rolling. We rolled from England once we hit the channel, and it was just a matter of hitting the channel without breaking speed. We kept right on going until the war was declared over in May, and we started sending troops home. And the first step was to get on a truck, a GI truck, to go where you had to go. Our company was the 3420th. We were the last of the 4 medium automotive maintenance companies. We could repair anything from a Jeep to a weapons carrier to a 2.5 ton, which was the main vehicle for World War II. The 2.5 ton and the Jeep won World War II for the Americans. That is, they were the mainstay for automotive support. You had bigger ones and you had some that were more medium-sized, but they were the 2 workhorses.
I am sorry we have to close our discussion because I'm sure that, like I feel I could sit here the rest of the evening and into the morning listening to this. You do?
I like to talk about these guys.
I would like to just ask one last question of each of you gentlemen. Mr. Ball, on behalf of your father, what do you think he took away from his experience as an African-American soldier, as an African-American pilot, at that particular moment in our American history, when there was obviously incredible racial segregation, and many people would not have done what your father did, or what Dr. Ware and Mr. Fauntroy did, which was to step up and serve the country, to step up and serve a country that thought that you were less than.
Mm-hmm.
How did your father handle that?
Well, I think it's important to mention, prior to World War II, and you're absolutely right, that was Plessy versus Ferguson was the law of the land, separate but equal. Black people knew that meant always separate and never equal. And so my father wanted to fly. The war broke out afterwards, and he was ready to go, defend the country that he had. Prior to World War II, there were 5 officers, 5 African-American officers in the entire Army. Now, well, he saw it as an opportunity. He went because rank has its privileges, and he made rank, and actually saw it as an opportunity to bring his family along, because his experience in the military, after, as they mentioned in the documentary, after 1981, the desegregation of the military, he saw that as an opportunity, and that really was revolutionary, because usually the military followed what the private sector was doing, and the private sector was still segregated. Harry Truman had the vision that, hey, we're not going to have a black Air Force and a white Air Force. We're not going to have a black Army and a white Army. We're going to have a United States Army and a United States Air Force. And so he desegregated, and that was actually the start of the modern civil rights movement in America.
Amen.
But my father saw the opportunity for his family to stay in. He stayed in the service 25 years. So after the war, he was a career officer, retired to lieutenant colonel, but saw it as an opportunity for his family to live better, because the military was taking the lead and the Air Force was #1 of the militaries. We talked about double victory, and that's the other victory, but turns out the first victory over Nazis and the Axis nations was the easier of the two victories, as difficult as that is to believe, because we're still fighting the same, still fighting that second victory. But he took that as an opportunity and saw it as the best opportunity for his advancement, as well as a good environment to raise a family. So that's why he stayed in, and that's why.
Thank you
I'm
so
here
much.
today.
Thank you. And Dr. Ware.
Let me add this. Howard L. Bohr was the #2 officer at Howard University who taught ROTC. He was popular because he represented everything, the epitome of everything. He dressed well, he spoke well, he demanded that you perform well. And he was the person that we tried to
emulate,
follow his example.
Right.
Howard L. Bohr, leader.
You're absolutely right. Howard University first, in the late 40s, early 50s, because that's where I was born.
You were born at Howard University Hospital?
No, I was born at Walter Reed.
At Walter
Walter
Reed?
Reed.
My middle brother and myself. He was born in 47, I'm 49, and he was at Howard, and that's why I was born at Walter Reed.
Well, welcome back home.
Yeah.
Dr. Ware, were you angry when you returned to the United States about our social structure? How did you deal with the conflict or possible conflict between your service to a country that did not necessarily value you as a human being?
You're so insignificant. You didn't think in those kind of terms.
Right.
You had no reason to feel that you were any better than the other black folks. Our parents, our relatives, were the
Our
ones who were
neighbors.
the backbone of the workforce in America. This is what gave us the means of winning World War II. And they were our examples. We could appreciate what was going on because we were facing this as we grew up. We were called all kinds of names. And where I went to school in New Jersey, we had a double school. Half of it was black and half was white. And they had a separate PTA. My mother was president of the PTA. And her children had to do what students have to do to get good grades and not get a report going home. I was the oldest boy, and I was expected to set an example, and not only for my little brother, but to let my sister know that I was there for them if they needed help. And it worked out pretty good. My sister, who went to Virginia State, was the first black female to get a job at the local fort, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. This is civil service, so she was one of the first girls to be able to get a civil service job. She was the first one, some 25 years later, to retire from a civil service job, but she had moved from the bottom to the top of the grades. I enjoyed World War II in that the war had been going on for a while, and guys were leaving from my hometown, coming into the service, and you didn't see them anymore, hear anything more about them. Once in a while, somebody would come through wearing a uniform, and we would learn something about how it was in the service, but nobody was just yearning to join the military service, not because of the war. You wanted to get into the war, but you didn't want to get into the Army. That was the only place that was at that time, well, the Navy was also drafting. It was primarily draft, but you could volunteer. I volunteered. I was in school, and in my sophomore year, I realized when June comes, I don't have anything special to do. Sooner or later, I'm going to end up in uniform, so I might as well volunteer now, and that's what I did. And when school was over, I was called, and I think within about a month or so, I was in the service. I ended up in the Ordnance Department, and that gave me a feel for the military, or what it could be. And as a result of that, 4 or 5 years later, I became a permanent member of the military. I decided that that's the way I would go. As an officer, the pay was better than most types of jobs that black men could get, and it had a better future. The possibilities for your future advancement were much better there. And I took advantage of it. I would recommend today anybody who really wants, who feel like they got something to offer, consider the military, male or female. It's available. I'm not giving a pitch. I'm not a recruiting officer.
Oh, yes,
but
you are.
it's your money, and it's your country, and you can marry those two.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ware. Mr. Fauntroy?
Yes. Mr. Fauntroy is my father. I'm Billy.
Yes, thank you. Son of Mr. Fauntroy, you have the last word. What would you say about our country today? We're not. What do you say to young people who ask you, based on your experience, your life experience, and especially your experience on the cusp of the civil rights movement? Where do we have to go? What do we have to do?
I tell young people now, when I speak to young people, the first thing I say to them is that it's up to you to do what you need to do for what you want to do. But the politics of today bothers me, because there are people who are still voting for people who don't believe in our country. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. I don't believe that some of the congressmen and senators, and indeed the second president, the recent president, I don't believe that they think about our country as I do, and as the Tuskegee Airmen in the past have done. We fought a war to preserve democracy. We are in the process right now of trying to undo everything that was done in World War II, in my opinion. I am like Ivan, I'm not a recruiter or anything, but I have an opinion, and since I've got an opportunity, I'm going to say it. The thing that bothers me, there are people in Congress who are saying we should have a civil war. That's unimaginable to me, that you can live in our country, and I say it's ours because we helped build it. And as far as I'm concerned, those people who are in the Congress who are saying things like we should have a civil war, or I represent you, I think they should be put on an island somewhere and taught what democracy is about. And it's about people like Noel Parrish. And I mean, Noel Parrish when he took over from a general, from a person who didn't believe in us, didn't believe that we could do anything. Noel Parrish stuck up for us, and indeed his wife is one of the former members of the Tuskegee Airmen. It bothers me that here's a person who has been the president of our country, was a millionaire at 3 years old, and still doesn't believe in our country. That's my opinion. And I think, I don't speak for Tuskegee Airmen, I speak for Bill Fauntroy. I believe that people like him should be separated from our country to make sure that they don't impair what we have done in this nation. When I went into service, I had to ride the back of the bus to go to Virginia. I had to be separated whenever we went to the theater, even on the military base. We had special seats for us, and the prisoners of war could sit anywhere. Those are the kinds of things that have changed for the better. And I thank God for my relationship with men like General McGee, like Yvonne McGee, like the Crockett family. They are people who have, to me, inspired me to tell young people, you can do what you want to do because of people like them. And I thank the guys that, who, like I said, whose shoulders I stand on. You can't imagine what it means to a young boy, because that's what I was, a young boy. I went into service, didn't have a high school diploma. I didn't have any of the things that were required. But those men who I went to school with, who taught me how to fly an airplane, I could fly an airplane, couldn't drive a car. that was, and you know, these are things that I tell young people to let them know that if you have a desire and you have people like the McGees, the Crockett's, Barr's father, if you have people like them that give you an example, you can proceed to do what you want to do. I don't recommend anything. I went to Howard University. I got a degree in civil engineering. I went from flying to underground. I have not flown an airplane since 1946. But I helped to build the metro in Washington, D.C., and design it. And I attribute that to my experience with these Tuskegee Airmen, because they said, Bill, you can do something other than what you are. And I thank them. And
thank you so much. Thank you very much. Would you please stand and give these gentlemen a round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. We are humbled to be in your presence.
My, you can't imagine how I feel so honored to be sitting. You see, Maxine didn't tell you. I used to sit behind her at the Tuskegee, at the Metro meetings. And she was an inspiration, because the way she talked to us, questioned what we were doing for Metro, and agreeing. You know, segregation stepped in there at that, and Maureen kept us going in the right direction, in my opinion.
And I'm still doing it. It was a pleasure to listen to you all. Thank you for your presence. And Mr. Fauntroy, you better not sit behind me anymore. We appreciate it. We appreciate and we love you. Thank you so much, gentlemen. And let's continue with our program. I'll come and stand behind you. Please welcome now the president of the East Coast chapter, Jerome Hodge, who has some special presentations to make. Please welcome Mr. Hodge. Where are you? Oh, he's behind me.
Thank you, Maureen. Again, good evening, everybody. On behalf of the East Coast chapter, Tuskegee Airmen, first of all, I want to thank Boeing for allowing us to come and spend the evening and honor the gentlemen like our original DOTAs, DOTA Fauntroy, and so thank you very much. And especially thank you for the $10,000 gift card. We'll put it to great use, absolutely. I want to take a real quick second, and one of the things I always want to do is give this opportunity to remind everybody that we at the East Coast chapter Tuskegee Airmen are not a military organization. You know, you don't have to have be a heritage member like Mr. Bob, but if you are, all we want you to do is if you have a desire to help young people, to keep the heritage and the legacy alive, and then help our young people, we use what we know, which is aviation, education aviation, to inspire them in the STEM-related career fields. We want you to come out, and we invite you to join the ECCTAI.org and become a member of the East Coast chapter of Tuskegee Airmen, no matter where you're at. All right? And so I've got a couple of awards of some folks who we're going to take the opportunity to reward because of what they've done to help us in the organization. And so I'm going to ask our national president, Jerry Burton, to come up here and give me a hand. And if he wants to say something before we get started. Okay? Can the representative for Albert Street Baptist Church come up? Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, Albert Street Baptist Church is located in Old Town, Alexandria. The church has over 8,000 members and continues to grow, building disciples to win the world for Christ. Albert Street Baptist Church has over 80 ministries to meet members' needs. Over the years, Albert Street has been a leader among churches and has made significant contributions in education, mission, children, and ministries, and advancement of women. Albert Street was among the first churches to ordain women as deacons, 1979, and the first in Virginia to ordain an African-American woman minister in 1980. Since then, the church has licensed or ordained 12 female ministers. Albert Street continues the legacy of worldwide leadership and it strives to make disciples to win the world of Christ. Following a relationship developed by Vanessa Butler, the CEO of Black Pearl Management and East Coast chapter member, became aware of the programs at ECTI, which is East Coast chapter. They decided and chose our organization as one of their community events that they were going to honor. And so late last year, Albert Street Baptist Church and one of the organizations donated $50,000 to the East Coast chapter Tuskegee Airmen. I said 50, 5-0, not 50,000. Okay, and so we have a plaque, and we want to offer Albert Street Baptist Church. You want to read real quick what it says?
Presented to Albert Street Baptist Church. Thank you for your generous donation to support the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day 2022.
you. Next, I want to ask Mr. Victor Hoskins and Ms. Diane Hoskins come up. And while they're coming up, Victor is the president and CEO of the Fairfax County, Virginia Economic Development Authority. He oversees growth of the largest economy in Virginia, which ranks #1 in 2019 and 2021, according to CNBC. America's top states of business study. Previously, he directed economic development in Arlington County, right where we're at today, where he led the team that bought Amazon second headquarters, creating 37,500 jobs for Northern Virginia and 100,000 jobs for the region. This resulted in attracting $4 billion in private capital investments and catalyzed the creation of 2 major technology innovation campuses. As Deputy Mayor of the District of Columbia, his team transformed Washington with projects such as City Center, the Wharf, and the Union Market. Victor's been active in a number of community organizations and has supported ECTI over several years, and we wanted to recognize him with an honorary membership and the Red Jacket to acknowledge his contributions to our program.
I don't like to do one at a time. I like to do them both at a time. I don't want him to say you got it.
That's right. And then, and also in her own right, Diane Hopkins, while she's putting on her jacket, is one of 2 Agenza co-CEOs, is an MIT-trained architect and an MBA from the Anderson School of UCLA. Diane's career spanned architectural design, real estate, and business. She has broad responsibility in running the firm, which spans over 6,000 employees, networked across 50 offices in America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Diane founded Gensler Industry-Leading Research Institute to spark new innovations, elevate the human experience, transform communities, and create a better world through the power of design. Among the Research Institute's most recent and groundbreaking IP, Gensler's Experience Index stands out as first of its kind study, proving that design is the key to creating successful retail experiences that improve sales, enhance shopping experiences, build consumer loyalty, and engage employees. Diane Hoskins has joined her husband in supporting ECTI over the years, and we are presenting her with an honorary jacket and membership in the Red Jacket to let her know how much we appreciate it. Again, we want to thank you. And we're going to ask that that membership is not only honorary. What committee you want to work on, let us know. Thank you very much.
Oh. Here we go. Now it's time. Y'all ready? Y'all are fast with the pictures.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hodge, and congratulations. We need that. We need that. Thank you, and congratulations to everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to let you know that our evening is unfortunately coming to an end. It's really not my pleasure, but I want to just say that one of the people we'd hoped to hear from tonight was Stephen Matthews, and he is chair of the Commemoration Day activities. Unfortunately, Mr. Matthews regrets he could not be with us because he was not feeling well tonight. So I hope you will pray for him and keep him in your thoughts. We'd like to ask Vanessa Butler to come forward. Vanessa? Vanessa is our strategic partner, in addition to being a strategic partner, she is in charge of our strategic partnership and outreach consultant, AKA the person who raises the money and raises our profile. Vanessa has some exciting news for us tonight as we close about her efforts to promote the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen. Vanessa?
I'm sorry. I'm going to take Stephen's place.
You take.
A very quick minute.
Go ahead.
Hi. I wanted to come forward to take the place of Stephen Matthews, our co-chair for Commemoration Day this year. My name is Diane Moore. I'm a heritage member of the East Coast Chapter, Tuskegee Airmen. My father, Colonel Dean Moore, was a communications officer with the Tuskegee Airmen, and I'm very proud of that legacy. Thank you. I wanted to provide opportunity for you to look at page 20 in your booklet. I hope you'll take it home, read about our programs as well as our projects. This is a project close to the heart of Mr. Matthews because he met some of the airmen many, many years ago. And that was at the same time that his daughter was training to become a professional violinist. And she is now a Juilliard graduate and helms her own orchestra. So Mr. Matthews got the inspiration, being in the classical music world. Wouldn't it be wonderful to commemorate the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen with a artistic medium that would live in perpetuity? He always says to me, we're still playing Mozart, we're still playing Beethoven. We need to have something for the Tuskegee Airmen that will live forever. So being involved with the classical world, he said to some colleagues, let's think about a Tuskegee Airmen symphony. And so that's one of our major projects going forward. We got together with the let me get the name right, the Major Anderson Tuskegee Aviation Maintenance Academy that Mr. Hodge helps, and we partnered with the ECTI chapter to commission someone to write the music, and we chose African-American composer Damian Sneed. You can go online, everybody's on YouTube, and see the music of Damian Sneed. He has now composed the music, and our project is to see that come to fruition and have a performance of the Tuskegee Airmen Symphony. I hope you'll take a minute to read about the history of his inspiration and find a way that you can support our project. Thank you.
Good evening, all. Thank you, Diane, for your words and comments. We regret that Mr. Stephen Matthews was unable to join us this evening. Stephen Matthews is, I don't know if that was mentioned earlier, but very good friends of the Hoskins. So Victor and Diane, you know that he wishes that he would have been here tonight, but he's certainly here in spirit, and he asked that we convey those sentiments of congratulations to you. Honestly, I owe my gratitude to Mr. Matthews as well. Approximately 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, Mr. Matthews asked me to join him on this journey to making the vision of the Tuskegee Airmen Symphony a reality. As such, I accepted. Not quite sure why, but he is very convincing, isn't he, Victor? I was certainly passionate about the mission and vision of the Tuskegee Airmen, and I wanted to ensure that I could uplift that idea, the premise of the history and the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen, and then also help in realizing that vision for the symphony. At the same time when Mr. Matthews had invited me, as I said, just short of 2 years ago, I was considering leaving my job at McKinsey. McKinsey is one of the, if not the top consulting firms, global consulting firms. And I had the encouragement and support of my leadership, global president, and the DC managing partner, and they encouraged me. They said, Vanessa, you are too passionate about the work that you do for your community. So one of the things that they always commented on was, Vanessa, you stand in your truth, and you're always elevating or trying to find ways to provide access to your community organizations. And at that time, when Mr. Matthews approached me, it was just fortuitous and timely that it aligned with my time to leave Mackenzie. And this is what I have gone out to do. It's been my mission, it's my heartfelt passion. I think some of you might have even heard me say, sometimes I wish I was not as passionate about the work I was, because that means quite a few sleepless nights in the process. But again, if these gentlemen can be here and have done and accomplished what they have over the years, and thank you again for your service, then that's the least that I can do and give to my community. I just want to acknowledge a couple of other additional individuals who are in this space. We have had, I have a couple of friends and lots of friends and colleagues in this space. I have individuals who are here from Pennsylvania. I have a dear colleague, Mr. Donahue Bailey. I have Dr. Joyce Spraggins, who was our MC for our wreath laying last week. I have locally Judge Quander and his wife, who also was our keynote speaker. And I don't know if it was mentioned earlier, the Quanders have 3 Tuskegee Airmen in their families, right? Their family history. I also have our honorary chair, Miss Lorraine Badley, as well as artist, Ms. Eunice Lafayette, who have traveled, and other colleague, pardon me, from Delaware. So I just want to recognize those that understand that we are here for you. We wanted to support you. So many have come from afar to join us this evening. Yes, thank you. And what I want to remind everybody is we're here certainly to recognize TACD, which we refer to as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. We recognize it as the 4th Thursday in March. And we are on a mission, well on our way, a mission to remember again your accomplishments and recognize and elevate those accomplishments. In that effort, in the year and a half that I've been with the organization, I have started the effort to recognize and partner with individuals such as Honorary Chair Lorraine Badley and Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester from Delaware, who on the last day of Black History Month recognized, who handed a letter to President Biden with the request and ask that we request a presidential proclamation in recognition of the national recognition of Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day on the 4th Thursday of March. So again, I do that in your honor. I do that humbly in your honor, humbly. Additionally, we then have our local congresswoman, because DC, we're still, fighting for the right to vote. But Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who has been a longstanding partner and champion of our cause, who on Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day, that was last Thursday, right? 3/23/23. That's right, 3/23/23, March 23rd, 2023. She presented on the floor of the House a proclamation for the congressional resolution, presidential proclamation, congressional resolution. So Eleanor Holmes Norton presented on the floor of the House House Resolution 249. So please take a note of that. And you'll probably see, I'll share that out in our thanks, but follow the progress of House Resolution 249. And that resolution was put on the floor by Eleanor Holmes Norton last week, Thursday. So we are well on our way to continuing to elevating and remembering, your contributions to our country. So thank you again for that. And in parting, I encourage us, to carry in our hearts what I call our call to action. That is on page 27. So you'll have this memorialized, right? And then you have this book. So I think there's always ways that you can help our local chapter, ECTI, East Coast chapter of Tuskegee Airmen. I believe we have 52 chapters, is that correct, President Burton? And then ultimately our national, the efforts of our nationally, what we're trying to do here. And if nothing else, if you can remember these 3 E's: educate, elevate, and empower. So again, that is educating others about the accomplishments and achievements of the Tuskegee Airmen. Educate. Elevating the stories of our surviving, our living legends. We heard them tonight. Our living legends, our documented original Tuskegee Airmen. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Really. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So elevating the stories of those who are here with us now. And then, again, just perpetually sharing the stories of those who have come before us, right? And lastly, empowering the next generation of scholars who are our leaders, right, in the underserved and often people realize underestimated communities in STEM and aviation. And that is done through our scholarship programs as well as our youth and aviation program. So again, I ask you to, as we leave here tonight, I invite our MC. Thank you so much, Maureen, really for all that you have done, tirelessly, effortlessly. You make it look, you just make it look easy. I have to work on it. I didn't sleep last night, Maureen, but thank you so much. But I just want us to leave in our hearts with the charge of being able to go out there. These are ways that we can remember to elevate and persevere the legacy of our Tuskegee Airmen. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you all for being in this space and in this time and in this moment with us. I want you to know that I have an attachment to the Tuskegee Airmen, not only because I admire them and because they're such an important part of American history, but for several years I was a trustee of Tuskegee University under the guidance of one of the most wonderful men in this country, Dr. Andrew Brimmer, the first African American to serve this country on the, oh my gosh, no, I can't think of the name. Federal Reserve Board. He was my neighbor, he was my friend, his son, his daughter, his son, his grandchild are all part of my family, my extended family. So, and he was on, I'm sure many of you know, he was on the boards of several airlines. And he would tell me the stories about how African Americans affected and influenced our, not only the airline industry today, but also, of course, the people who brought African Americans and brought our people into the aviation industry, the great men of Tuskegee. So tonight, I think we've soared to greater heights, and I hope we continue to. Please give all of our Tuskegee Airmen another round of applause. We wish you all a good night. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.